Marcus Thompson stood behind the security desk at Pinnacle Tech Solutions. He had been working as a security guard for 2 years. Every morning, he put on his crisp blue uniform and shiny black shoes. He took his job very seriously. Marcus believed that keeping the company safe was his most important duty. The tall glass building sparkled in the morning sun. People in expensive suits walked through the lobby. Everyone had their company ID cards hanging around their necks. Marcus knew most of the workers by face. He watched them swipe their cards at the entrance gates. Everything ran like clockwork. It was Tuesday morning, just after 9 o'clock. Marcus was checking the visitor log when he heard the front door open. A man walked into the lobby. Marcus looked up and frowned. This person did not look like he belonged here. The stranger was about 40 years old. He wore old blue jeans with holes in the knees. His gray hoodie looked like it had seen better days. His hair was messy and he had not shaved in several days. He carried a small black backpack that looked worn and dirty. His sneakers made soft squeaking sounds on the polished marble floor. Marcus watched the man carefully. In 2 years of working here, he had never seen anyone dress so casually. Even the cleaning crew wore proper uniforms. This man looked like he had just woken up from sleeping on the street. The stranger walked toward the reception desk. Sarah, the young receptionist, was busy answering phone calls. She did not notice him approaching. Marcus decided he needed to act quickly. He stepped out from behind his security station. "Excuse me, sir," Marcus called out. His voice was firm and professional. "Can I help you with something?" The man turned around. He had tired eyes but a gentle smile. "Oh, hello," he said. "I'm just trying to get to my office." Marcus felt his muscles tense. "Your office?" he repeated. "Do you work here?" "Yes, I do," the man replied calmly. "I just got back from a long trip. I'm a bit tired." Marcus looked the man up and down again. He had been trained to spot people who did not belong. This person definitely did not fit. "Sir, I need to see your company ID card," Marcus said. The man patted his pockets. He checked his hoodie and his jeans. Then he opened his backpack and looked inside. "I think I might have left it at home," he said. "I was traveling for a long time. My bags are still packed. You left your ID at home?" Marcus asked. His voice was getting harder. "Sir, no one is allowed in this building without proper identification." The stranger nodded. "I understand. But I really do work here. My name is David Chen. Maybe you can call someone to verify who I am." Marcus had never heard the name David Chen before. In his 2 years of working security, he knew the names of all the important people. He knew the managers, the department heads, and even some of the regular workers. This name meant nothing to him. "Sir, I'm going to need you to step back," Marcus said. He moved closer to the man. "If you really work here, you would have your ID card. You would also be dressed appropriately for a business environment." David looked down at his clothes. "You're right about the clothes," he said with a small laugh. "I know I look terrible. I just got off a very long flight. I haven't been home yet. I just wanted to check on a few things at the office first." Marcus was not convinced. He had heard every excuse in the book. People always tried to get into buildings where they did not belong. Some wanted to steal things. Others wanted to cause trouble. It was his job to stop them. "Sir, where exactly is your office?" Marcus asked. "What department do you work in?" "I work on the top floor," David said. "The executive level." This made Marcus even more suspicious. The top floor was where all the important executives worked. Those people always wore expensive suits. They had assistants who called ahead when they were coming. They never showed up looking like homeless people. "The executive level?" Marcus repeated. "What's your job title?" David hesitated for a moment. "It's complicated," he said. "I'm involved in the overall operations of the company." Marcus almost laughed. This was clearly someone trying to talk his way into the building. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to leave," he said. "If you really work here, you can come back tomorrow with proper identification and appropriate clothing." "Look, I understand this is confusing," David said. He was still speaking calmly. "But I really do need to get upstairs. There are some important things I need to take care of." Marcus shook his head. "I'm sorry, but that's not going to happen. Company policy is very clear. No ID card, no entry. No exceptions." Other people in the lobby were starting to notice the conversation. A few employees stopped to watch. Marcus felt proud that they could see him doing his job properly. He was protecting their workplace from unwanted visitors. David tried a different approach. "Maybe you could call the HR department?" They would know who I am. Sir, HR is very busy, Marcus replied. They don't have time to deal with people who can't follow basic security procedures. The man in the hoodie looked around the lobby. He seemed to be thinking about something. What about the reception desk? Maybe Sarah could help. Marcus glanced at Sarah, who was still busy with phone calls. The receptionist is not here to help people who don't belong in the building, he said. David sighed. I understand you're just doing your job, he said. But this is really important. I've been away for 6 months. There are things I need to check on. 6 months? Marcus asked. If you really worked here, why would you be away for 6 months? I was traveling for business, David explained. International expansion projects. I was setting up new offices in Asia. Marcus had heard enough. This story was getting more ridiculous by the minute. Important executives didn't travel alone for 6 months. They had teams of assistants. They stayed in contact with their offices. They definitely didn't show up looking like they had been living on the streets. Sir, I'm going to have to insist that you leave now, Marcus said. His voice was getting louder. If you continue to argue with me, I'll have to call the police. David looked surprised. The police? That seems a bit extreme. People who try to break into buildings often require police intervention, Marcus replied. He was feeling more confident now. He was clearly dealing with someone who was up to no good. The lobby was getting busier. More employees were arriving for work. Some of them slowed down to watch the confrontation. Marcus felt good about having an audience. They would see how well he protected their workplace. David looked around at all the people watching. He seemed uncomfortable with the attention. Maybe we could discuss this more privately, he suggested. There's nothing to discuss, Marcus said firmly. You need to leave immediately. The situation was about to get much worse for everyone involved. Marcus could see that the stranger was not going to give up easily. David stood there looking tired but determined. This made Marcus even more suspicious. Most people would have left by now. The fact that this man was being so persistent made Marcus think he was definitely up to something bad. Sir, I've asked you politely to leave, Marcus said. His voice was getting louder. I don't want to have to use force, but I will if necessary. David held up his hands. There's no need for force, he said calmly. I just think there's been a misunderstanding. If you could just make one phone call. I'm not making any phone calls for someone who can't even prove they work here. Marcus interrupted. Do you have any idea how many people try to get into this building every week? People like you, with crazy stories and no identification. More employees were gathering in the lobby now. Marcus noticed that none of them seemed to recognize the man in the hoodie. This proved his point. If David really worked here, someone would know him. Look around, Marcus said, pointing to the crowd. Do you see anyone here who knows you? Do you see anyone coming to help you? That's because you don't belong here. David looked at the faces around him. Marcus could see confusion in the man's eyes. For a moment, David seemed unsure of himself. But then he spoke again. I've been away for a long time, David said. Maybe people don't recognize me because of how I look right now. And because I've been gone for 6 months, Marcus laughed. 6 months? If you really worked here and you were gone for 6 months, don't you think your boss would have told security about your return? Don't you think there would be some kind of notice? Maybe there was supposed to be, David said quietly. I came back earlier than planned. I wanted to surprise everyone. The only surprise here is how long you're taking to leave, Marcus replied. He was starting to lose his patience. This conversation had gone on too long already. Sarah, the receptionist, finished her phone call and looked over at the commotion. Marcus waved to get her attention. Sarah, he called out. Do you know this man? Has he ever worked here? Sarah squinted at David. She shook her head. I've never seen him before, she said. And I know most of the people who work here. Marcus felt vindicated. There you have it, he said to David. The receptionist doesn't know you. She's been here for 3 years. David looked disappointed but not defeated. Maybe she doesn't work with the executive level very often, he suggested. Executive level? Sarah laughed. I answer phones for executives all the time. I would definitely remember someone who claimed to work up there. Marcus could see that David was running out of excuses. It was time to end this charade once and for all. Sir, you have exactly 1 minute to leave this building, Marcus announced loudly. After that, I'm calling the police and having you arrested for trespassing. The crowd of employees seemed to approve of Marcus's firm stance. He could hear a few people whispering their support. This made him feel even more confident that he was doing the right thing. David tried one more approach. What if I could tell you specific things about this company? Things that only someone who worked here would know. Marcus crossed his arms. Go ahead, he said. But you should know that lots of information about companies is available online these days. David thought for a moment. The coffee machine on the 3rd floor has been broken for 2 weeks. The elevator in the West Wing makes a strange noise between the 5th and 6th floors. There's a leak in the men's bathroom on the 7th floor that maintenance hasn't fixed yet. Marcus was not impressed. Anyone could find out those things by talking to employees or looking at maintenance reports, he said. Real employees would know important things like who their boss is or what projects they're working on. I can tell you about projects too, David said. We're working on expanding into 3 new Asian markets. We just signed a major contract with a tech company in Singapore. We're also developing a new software platform that should launch next quarter. Again, that's all information you could get from press releases or news articles, Marcus replied. Nice try, but you're going to have to do better than that. David looked frustrated for the first time. What would it take to convince you? What kind of proof would you accept? Marcus thought about this. Real employees have ID cards. They have keys to their offices. They have business cards. They have colleagues who recognize them. You have none of these things. I told you I left my ID at home, David said, and I don't have my office keys with me because I wasn't planning to stay long. Convenient excuses, Marcus said sarcastically. Let me guess. You also forgot your business cards and your company credit card and your parking pass? David actually smiled at this. I don't use a company credit card for personal expenses, he said. And I don't need a parking pass because I usually take the subway to work. This statement made Marcus even more suspicious. Executives at Pinnacle Tech Solutions all drove expensive cars. They all had reserved parking spots in the garage. The idea of an executive taking the subway was ridiculous. You take the subway? Marcus asked. To get to your executive job? Sometimes, David said. It's faster than driving during rush hour, and it's better for the environment. Marcus shook his head. This man was clearly delusional. Sir, I've heard enough. You have 30 seconds to leave or I'm calling the police. David looked around the lobby one more time. The crowd of employees was getting larger. Some people were taking pictures with their phones. Others were recording videos. David seemed uncomfortable with all the attention. This is really embarrassing, David said quietly. It's about to get more embarrassing when the police arrive, Marcus warned. David sighed deeply. Fine, he said. I'll leave. But this isn't over. Someone is going to hear about how I was treated here today. Marcus almost laughed again. Who's going to hear about it? Your imaginary boss? Your pretend colleagues? People will hear about it, David said firmly. Important people. I'm sure they will, Marcus said mockingly. Now please leave before I have to physically remove you. David started walking toward the exit. But he moved slowly, as if he was hoping someone would recognize him and come to his rescue. Marcus watched him carefully, ready to act if the man tried to run toward the elevators. As David reached the door, he turned around one last time. You're making a big mistake, he said. The only mistake here is yours, Marcus replied. You picked the wrong building to try your scam on. David shook his head sadly and walked out the door. Marcus watched through the glass as the man stood on the sidewalk for a moment, looking back at the building. Then David pulled out his phone and started making a call. Marcus felt proud of himself. He had successfully protected the company from an unwanted intruder. The employees in the lobby were talking excitedly about what they had just witnessed. Several people came over to congratulate Marcus on his handling of the situation. Good job, Marcus, said Jennifer from accounting. That guy was definitely up to no good. Thanks, Marcus replied. It's all part of the job. We can't let just anyone walk in here. I can't believe he thought he could fool us with that story about being an executive, said Tom from marketing. Did you see how he was dressed? Marcus nodded. Some people have no shame. They'll try anything to get into a building like this. As the crowd dispersed and people went back to their work, Marcus returned to his security desk. He felt satisfied with how he had handled the situation. This was exactly the kind of thing he had been trained for. He made a note in the security log about the incident. He wrote down the time, the man's description, and a summary of what had happened. This would be important documentation in case the man tried to come back. Marcus had no idea that his life was about to change forever. Marcus thought David had left for good, but 10 minutes later he saw the same man approaching the building again. This time David was not alone. He was on his phone talking to someone in an urgent voice. Marcus could see him gesturing toward the building as he spoke. "This guy doesn't give up," Marcus muttered to himself. He picked up his radio and called for backup security. "Jake, I need you in the lobby," Marcus said into his radio. "That suspicious person from earlier is coming back." Jake Rodriguez was the other security guard on duty. He was older than Marcus and had been working security for many years. Within 2 minutes, Jake appeared in the lobby. "What's the situation?" Jake asked. "Remember that guy in the hoodie I told you about? The one who claimed to work here?" Marcus explained. "He's back and he's acting even more suspicious now." Through the glass doors, they could see David ending his phone call. He put his phone in his pocket and walked toward the entrance again. "He looks pretty normal to me," Jake said, watching David approach. "Trust me, he's trouble," Marcus replied. "He tried to convince me he's some kind of executive." "Can you believe that?" David pushed open the glass door and stepped back into the lobby. This time he looked more determined than before. He walked straight toward Marcus and Jake. "Gentlemen," David said politely, "I've just spoken with someone who can verify my identity. Would it be possible to make a quick phone call to confirm who I am?" Marcus shook his head immediately. "Sir, I already told you to leave. The fact that you came back makes this harassment. You're not welcome in this building. I understand your concern," David said patiently, "but I really do work here. I can give you a phone number to call. Someone will confirm my identity." Jake looked at Marcus questioningly. "Maybe we should just make the call," he suggested quietly. Marcus was annoyed that Jake was not supporting him fully. "Jake, this man is clearly trying to run some kind of scam. We don't have time to chase down his fake references." "It's not a fake reference," David said firmly. "It's a real person who knows me." Marcus stepped closer to David. "Sir, I'm going to ask you one final time to leave this building. If you refuse, we will physically remove you." David remained calm, but Marcus could see frustration in his eyes. "I don't want any trouble," David said. "I just want to go to my office." "You don't have an office here," Marcus stated loudly. "You're a liar and a fraud, and you need to leave right now." Several employees had noticed the new commotion. A small crowd began to gather again. Marcus felt good about having witnesses to support his actions. "Sir, you have 10 seconds to start walking toward that door," Marcus announced. "If you don't move, we will escort you out." David looked around at all the people watching. He seemed embarrassed by the attention. "This is really unnecessary," he said quietly. "What's unnecessary is your continued harassment of our employees," Marcus replied. "Time's up. Jake, help me escort this man out." Jake still looked uncertain, but he followed Marcus's lead. Both security guards moved to stand on either side of David. "Gentlemen, please," David said. "There's no need for this. Just make one phone call." Marcus grabbed David's left arm. "Sir, you're leaving now, whether you want to or not." Jake reluctantly took David's right arm. Together they started walking David toward the exit. "This is assault," David said, but his voice remained calm. "You're physically forcing me to leave a building where I have every right to be." "You have no rights here," Marcus replied as they walked. "You're trespassing on private property." The crowd of employees followed at a distance, watching the drama unfold. Some people were recording the incident with their phones. Marcus felt proud that everyone could see him doing his job properly. As they approached the exit, David tried one more time to reason with them. "If you'll just listen to me for 1 minute." "We've listened enough," Marcus interrupted. "You had your chance to prove you belong here and you failed." David stopped trying to resist. He allowed the 2 guards to escort him to the door without fighting back. This surprised Marcus, who had expected more of a struggle. "Sir, you're banned from this building," Marcus announced as they reached the exit. "If you come back again, we will call the police immediately." "You're making a terrible mistake," David said as they pushed him outside. "The only mistake would be letting you stay," Marcus replied. Once David was outside, Marcus and Jake stood in the doorway, blocking any attempt for him to come back in. David stood on the sidewalk looking frustrated but not angry. "You'll regret this," David said, but he didn't sound threatening. He sounded sad. "I doubt that," Marcus replied. "Have a nice day, sir. And remember, don't come back." David walked away from the building, pulling out his phone again. Marcus watched him go, feeling satisfied with how he had handled the situation. "That was weird," Jake said as they walked back to the security desk. What do you mean? Marcus asked. Most people would have gotten angry, Jake explained. They would have yelled and cursed. That guy stayed calm the whole time. Marcus shrugged. Maybe he's just a good actor. Some scam artists are very smooth. I guess, Jake said, but he still looked uncertain. Back at his desk, Marcus updated his security log with details about the second incident. He noted that the subject had returned after being asked to leave and had required physical removal from the premises. Several employees came over to talk about what they had witnessed. I can't believe that guy had the nerve to come back, said Michelle from Human Resources. Some people have no shame, Marcus agreed. But don't worry, he won't be bothering anyone here again. Did he really claim to be an executive? Asked Robert from the IT department. Can you believe it? Marcus laughed. He said he worked on the executive level, as if someone who looked like that could ever be an executive here. Everyone laughed at this. Marcus felt good about entertaining his colleagues with the story. What do you think he really wanted? Asked Michelle. Probably looking to steal something, Marcus replied. Or maybe he was planning to cause some kind of trouble. You never know with people like that. As the crowd dispersed again, Marcus returned to his normal duties. He checked the visitor log and monitored the security cameras. Everything seemed back to normal. About an hour later, Jake approached Marcus with a concerned look on his face. Marcus, I've been thinking about that guy, Jake said quietly. What about him? Marcus asked. He seemed to know things about the building. Specific things, like the broken coffee machine and the elevator noise. Marcus waved this off. I told you anyone could find out that information. He probably talked to employees outside the building. Maybe, Jake said. But something felt off about the whole thing. The only thing that was off was him trying to get into a building where he didn't belong. Marcus replied firmly. Jake nodded, but he still looked worried. I hope we did the right thing. Trust me, we did exactly the right thing, Marcus assured him. That's what we're paid for. Marcus had no idea that within a few hours his confidence would be completely shattered. The security cameras had recorded everything, and those recordings were about to change his life forever. The day seemed to be returning to normal, but Marcus began to notice something strange. There seemed to be more activity than usual on the upper floors. He could see people moving around quickly through the windows of the executive level. There were more phone calls at the reception desk. Several managers seemed to be having urgent conversations. Marcus didn't think much of it at first. Big companies always had something important happening. But as the morning went on, the unusual activity continued to increase. Little did Marcus know that his actions had set off a chain of events that would soon reach the highest levels of the company. The man in the hoodie had not been lying about making important phone calls, and those phone calls were about to have serious consequences for everyone involved. The truth was coming, and when it arrived, it would change everything Marcus thought he knew about his job and his company. About 30 minutes after David had been escorted from the building, Marcus began to notice strange things happening around the office. At first, these changes seemed small and unimportant, but as time went on, they became harder to ignore. The first thing Marcus noticed was Sarah, the receptionist. She was usually calm and organized, handling phone calls with professional ease, but now she seemed nervous and flustered. She kept looking at her computer screen and shuffling through papers on her desk. Marcus watched as Sarah answered a phone call. Her voice sounded different than usual. Pinnacle Tech Solutions, how may I help you? She said. Then Marcus saw her face change. Her eyes went wide and she sat up straighter in her chair. Oh, yes, sir, Sarah said quickly. I understand. Let me check on that right away. She put the caller on hold and immediately started typing frantically on her computer. Marcus had never seen Sarah look so worried. After a few minutes on the computer, Sarah picked up the phone again. I'm sorry, sir, but I don't see any record of that. Could you please give me more details? Marcus couldn't hear what the caller was saying, but he could see that Sarah was getting more upset. She kept nodding her head and saying, yes, sir, over and over again. When Sarah finally hung up the phone, she immediately picked it up again and dialed an internal number. Mr. Peterson, this is Sarah at the front desk, she said urgently. I just received a very strange phone call. Could you please come down to the lobby when you have a moment? Mr. Peterson was the head of Human Resources. Marcus wondered why Sarah would need to call him about a phone call. Within 5 minutes, Mr. Peterson appeared in the lobby. He was a tall, thin man who usually moved slowly and spoke in a quiet voice, but today he seemed rushed and anxious. Marcus watched as Sarah and Mr. Peterson had a quiet conversation at the reception desk. Sarah kept pointing at her computer screen and shaking her head. Mr. Peterson's face grew more serious as they talked. After their conversation, Mr. Peterson hurried back to the elevators, but instead of going to his usual floor, Marcus noticed that the elevator went all the way up to the executive level. This was unusual. Mr. Peterson rarely visited the executive floor unless there was some kind of emergency. 20 minutes later, Marcus noticed another strange phone call. This time it was a different receptionist who had come to relieve Sarah for her break. The new receptionist, Linda, answered a call and immediately looked confused. "I'm sorry, could you repeat that?" Linda said into the phone. "You're looking for who?" Linda listened for a moment, then put the caller on hold. She turned to Sarah, who was getting ready to go on her break. "Sarah, someone is calling about a Mr. Chen. They say he was supposed to be in a meeting this morning. Do you know anything about this?" Sarah's face went pale. "Mr. Chen?" she repeated. "That's the name the man in the hoodie mentioned." Marcus felt a cold feeling in his stomach, but he told himself it was just a coincidence. Chen was a common name. It could be anyone. Linda picked up the phone again. "I'm sorry, sir, but we don't have any record of a Mr. Chen having a meeting here today. Are you sure you have the right company?" Marcus could see that Linda was getting frustrated with the caller. The conversation went on for several more minutes before Linda finally hung up. "That was weird," Linda said to Sarah. "The caller insisted that Mr. Chen was supposed to be here for an important meeting. He seemed very upset that Mr. Chen wasn't available." Sarah looked worried. "Maybe we should call Mr. Peterson again," she suggested. But before Linda could make the call, the phone rang again. This time, Linda's conversation was even more strange. "Pinnacle Tech Solutions," Linda answered. "Oh, hello, Mrs. Johnson. Yes, I understand you're trying to reach Mr. Chen. But as I told the other caller, we don't have anyone by that name scheduled for meetings today." Mrs. Johnson seemed to be someone important, because Linda's voice became very respectful and apologetic. "I'm so sorry for the confusion. Mrs. Johnson, let me transfer you to Human Resources right away." Marcus was starting to feel nervous. 3 phone calls in 1 hour asking about someone named Chen was not a coincidence, and all 3 callers seemed to expect that this Mr. Chen should be in the building. As Linda transferred the call to Mr. Peterson, Marcus noticed more unusual activity around the office. Several executives were moving around more than usual. He could see them through the glass walls of their offices, making phone calls and having urgent conversations. Ms. Rodriguez, the vice president of operations, walked quickly through the lobby. She was talking on her cell phone and looked very concerned. Marcus had never seen her look so worried. "I understand that," Ms. Rodriguez was saying into her phone, "but he's not here. Security has no record of him entering the building today." She paused to listen to the person on the other end of the call. "Yes, I know how important this is," she continued. "We're trying to figure out what happened. I'll call you back as soon as I have more information." Marcus felt his hands getting sweaty. Ms. Rodriguez had mentioned security having no record of someone entering the building. Could she be talking about the man in the hoodie? About an hour after the first strange phone call, Mr. Peterson returned to the lobby. This time he was not alone. With him was Ms. Rodriguez and another executive Marcus didn't recognize. The 3 of them gathered around the reception desk. Marcus could see that they were having a serious conversation, but he couldn't hear what they were saying. Sarah and Linda both looked very nervous as they answered questions. Marcus saw Mr. Peterson point toward the security desk. All 3 executives turned to look at him. Marcus felt his face getting red. Why were they looking at him? Ms. Rodriguez broke away from the group and walked toward Marcus. His heart started beating faster. "Marcus," she said when she reached his desk, "we need to ask you some questions about this morning." "Of course, ma'am," Marcus replied, trying to sound professional. "How can I help you?" "We've received several phone calls from people looking for someone who was supposed to be in the building today," Ms. Rodriguez explained. "They're asking about a man named David Chen. Did anyone by that name try to enter the building this morning?" Marcus felt relief wash over him. He could answer this question honestly. "Yes, ma'am," he said confidently. "A man claiming to be David Chen tried to get into the building around 9 o'clock. But he didn't have proper identification, so I refused to let him in. Ms. Rodriguez's expression became very serious. You refused to let him in? That's correct, Marcus said proudly. He was dressed inappropriately and couldn't provide a company ID card. I followed proper security procedures and asked him to leave. And did he leave? Ms. Rodriguez asked. Not at first, Marcus admitted. He came back about 10 minutes later and became more insistent. Jake and I had to physically escort him from the building. Ms. Rodriguez closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, she looked very tired. Marcus, can you describe this man for me? Certainly, Marcus replied. He was about 40 years old, wearing old jeans and a gray hoodie. He looked like he hadn't shaved or showered in days. Definitely not the kind of person who would work in a professional environment like this. Ms. Rodriguez was quiet for a long moment. Marcus could see that she was thinking hard about something. Marcus, we need to review the security footage from this morning, she said finally. Can you pull up the recordings from the lobby cameras? Of course, Marcus said. He was happy to show the executives how well he had handled the situation. The security footage would prove that he had done his job correctly. As Marcus began accessing the security footage, he noticed that more executives were gathering in the lobby. The crowd was growing larger and everyone looked very serious. Marcus still believed he had done the right thing, but deep down a small voice was starting to whisper that something was very wrong. Marcus pulled up the security footage on his computer screen. Ms. Rodriguez stood behind him, watching carefully as he navigated through the recorded video. Mr. Peterson and the other executives gathered around the security desk, creating a small crowd. Here's the footage from 9 o'clock this morning, Marcus said confidently. He clicked play and pointed at the screen. You can see the man entering the lobby right here. On the screen, they could all see David walking into the building in his worn jeans and gray hoodie. Marcus felt vindicated watching the footage. Anyone could see that this person did not belong in a professional office building. Look at how he's dressed, Marcus said to the executives. No professional would ever show up to work looking like that. Ms. Rodriguez didn't respond. She was watching the video very intently, studying David's face and movements. The video continued, showing Marcus approaching David and beginning their conversation. Even without sound, it was clear that Marcus was being firm and professional in his handling of the situation. This is where I asked him for his company ID, Marcus explained, pointing to the screen. You can see that he couldn't produce one. Mr. Peterson pulled out his cell phone and started making a call. Marcus could hear him speaking quietly to someone, but he couldn't make out the words. As the video continued, it showed David trying to explain his situation, and Marcus becoming more insistent that he leave. The other executives watched in silence, their faces growing more serious with each passing minute. Here's where I had to call for backup, Marcus said as Jake appeared on the screen. The subject was becoming more persistent and argumentative. Ms. Rodriguez finally spoke. Marcus paused the video for a moment. Marcus stopped the playback and looked up at her expectantly. Marcus, I need you to think very carefully about your answer to this question, Ms. Rodriguez said slowly. Did this man tell you his name? Yes, ma'am, Marcus replied. He said his name was David Chen. And when he told you that name, did it mean anything to you? Marcus shook his head. No, ma'am. I've never heard that name before. In my 2 years working here, I've never encountered anyone named David Chen. Ms. Rodriguez exchanged a look with Mr. Peterson. Marcus could see that they were communicating something without words, but he didn't understand what. Mr. Peterson finished his phone call and approached the group. I just spoke with Janet in HR, he said quietly to Ms. Rodriguez. She's pulling together all the documentation we need. Marcus felt confused. What documentation could they possibly need? This was just a simple security incident involving a trespasser. Marcus, continue playing the video, Ms. Rodriguez instructed. The footage showed the second part of the incident, where David had returned to the building and Marcus and Jake had physically escorted him out. Marcus felt proud watching himself handle the situation so professionally. You can see that we followed proper procedures, Marcus said. We gave him multiple opportunities to leave voluntarily before using physical intervention. When the video ended, the executive stood in silence for several long moments. Marcus could feel tension in the air, but he didn't understand why everyone seemed so serious. Finally, Ms. Rodriguez spoke again. Marcus, I need you to come with me to the conference room. We need to have a more detailed conversation about this incident. Marcus felt a flutter of nervousness in his stomach. "Is there a problem, ma'am?" "We just need to clarify a few things," Ms. Rodriguez replied diplomatically. As they walked toward the conference room, Marcus noticed that Mr. Peterson was carrying a manila folder filled with papers. He also noticed that several other executives were following them. This seemed like a lot of attention for a simple security incident. They entered a small conference room on the first floor. Ms. Rodriguez gestured for Marcus to sit at one end of the long table, while she and the other executives sat across from him. The arrangement made Marcus feel like he was being interviewed or interrogated. Mr. Peterson opened his manila folder and pulled out several documents. Marcus could see what looked like employee files and company organizational charts. "Marcus," Mr. Peterson began, "how long have you been working security for Pinnacle Tech Solutions?" "2 years, sir," Marcus replied. "I started in September 2023. And during those 2 years, have you ever seen this person before?" Mr. Peterson slid a photograph across the table. Marcus looked at the picture. It showed a man in an expensive business suit, clean-shaven and well-groomed. The man was smiling and standing in what looked like an office setting. "No, sir," Marcus said. "I've never seen this person before." "Look more carefully," Ms. Rodriguez suggested. "Study the facial features." Marcus picked up the photograph and examined it more closely. There was something familiar about the man's eyes and the shape of his face, but he couldn't place where he might have seen him. "I'm sorry, but I don't recognize him," Marcus said honestly. Mr. Peterson and Ms. Rodriguez looked at each other again. Then Mr. Peterson pulled out another document from his folder. "Marcus, this is the company organizational chart," he said, placing the paper in front of Marcus. "Can you show me where your position appears on this chart?" Marcus studied the organizational chart. It was a complex diagram, showing all the different departments and management levels within Pinnacle Tech Solutions. At the bottom of the chart, under Facilities and Security, he found his own name. "Here I am," Marcus said, pointing to his position on the chart. "Good," Mr. Peterson said. "Now, can you tell me who appears at the very top of this organizational chart?" Marcus looked at the top of the chart. In the highest position, labeled Chief Executive Officer and Founder, he saw a name that made his blood run cold. "David Chen," he read aloud, his voice barely above a whisper. The room fell silent. Marcus stared at the name on the chart, trying to process what he was seeing. His hands started to tremble slightly. "Marcus," Ms. Rodriguez said gently, "look at the photograph again." With shaking hands, Marcus picked up the photograph. This time, as he studied the well-dressed man in the picture, he began to see similarities to the disheveled man he had thrown out of the building that morning. The eyes were the same. The shape of the face was the same. Even the gentle smile was the same. The realization hit Marcus like a physical blow. The man in the expensive suit was the same person as the man in the old jeans and hoodie. He had just thrown the CEO and founder of Pinnacle Tech Solutions out of his own building. "Oh no," Marcus whispered. "Oh no. Marcus, are you beginning to understand the situation?" Mr. Peterson asked quietly. Marcus felt like he was going to be sick. His face went pale and he started sweating despite the air conditioning in the conference room. "I threw out the CEO," Marcus said, more to himself than to the executives. "I physically removed the CEO from his own building." Mr. Chen had been traveling internationally for 6 months, Ms. Rodriguez explained. He was setting up new offices in Asia. He returned to the United States yesterday earlier than anyone expected. He wanted to surprise the staff by coming in to check on things. Marcus put his head in his hands. "He tried to tell me," he said miserably. "He said he worked on the executive level. He said he'd been traveling for business. I didn't believe him." "Mr. Chen often dresses casually when he's not in meetings," Mr. Peterson added. "He's known for being informal and approachable. He believes in staying connected with all levels of the company." Marcus felt like his world was falling apart. Everything he thought he knew about the situation had been completely wrong. He had humiliated his own boss, the most important person in the entire company. "What happens now?" Marcus asked, his voice shaking. Ms. Rodriguez and Mr. Peterson exchanged another look. "That," Ms. Rodriguez said slowly, "is something we'll need to discuss with Mr. Chen." Marcus realized that his career at Pinnacle Tech Solutions was probably over. Worse than that, his reputation in the security industry was likely ruined. Who would hire a security guard who had thrown out the CEO of his own company? As the full magnitude of his mistake began to sink in, Marcus wondered if there was any way to fix the damage he had done. But deep down he feared that some mistakes were too big to be forgiven. Word of what had happened spread through Pinnacle Tech Solutions like wildfire. By lunchtime, everyone in the building knew that Marcus had thrown the CEO out of his own company. The story traveled from department to department, growing more dramatic with each telling. Marcus sat in the conference room, still in shock from the revelation. Ms. Rodriguez and Mr. Peterson had left him alone for a few minutes while they made urgent phone calls and held emergency meetings. Through the glass walls of the conference room, Marcus could see employees gathering in small groups, whispering and pointing in his direction. When Ms. Rodriguez returned, she was accompanied by Janet Mills, the head of human resources. Janet was a serious woman who rarely smiled, and today she looked particularly grim. "Marcus," Janet said as she sat down across from him, "we need to discuss the immediate consequences of this morning's incident." Marcus felt his stomach drop. "Am I being fired?" "That decision hasn't been made yet," Janet replied carefully. "But I need you to understand the severity of what happened. You physically removed the company's CEO and founder from his own building. You did this in front of numerous employees and visitors. The entire incident was recorded on security cameras." Marcus nodded miserably. "I understand. Do you?" Janet asked. "Because the implications go far beyond just your employment here. This incident has created a serious public relations problem for the company. Videos of the confrontation are already being shared on social media." Marcus looked confused. "Social media?" Ms. Rodriguez pulled out her phone and showed Marcus a video that was playing on a social media platform. It showed Marcus and Jake escorting David out of the building. The video had already been viewed thousands of times, and the comment section was filled with shocked reactions. Employees filmed the incident on their phones, Ms. Rodriguez explained. Some of them posted the videos online before they realized who David was. Now it's spreading across the internet. Marcus watched the video in horror, seeing himself on the screen. Aggressively handling someone who looked like a homeless person made him feel sick. The comments were even worse. "Security guard power trip. This is why corporate security is out of control. Poor guy just wanted to get to work." "The company's reputation is being damaged," Janet continued. "We're getting calls from news outlets wanting to know what happened. Our stock price has already dropped 2 points since the story started spreading online." Marcus felt overwhelmed by the magnitude of what he had caused. "I was just doing my job," he said weakly. "Were you?" Janet asked pointedly. "Let's review what actually happened. A man approached you claiming to work here. Instead of following proper verification procedures, you immediately assumed he was lying. You refused to make a simple phone call that would have confirmed his identity. You escalated the situation unnecessarily, and then you used physical force to remove him from the building." Each point hit Marcus like a punch to the stomach. When Janet laid it out like that, his actions sounded inexcusable. "But he didn't have an ID card," Marcus protested. "He was dressed inappropriately. No one recognized him." Mr. Chen had been traveling for 6 months, Ms. Rodriguez pointed out. Many of the newer employees had never seen him before. And even if they had, people look different when they're tired from traveling. You should have followed proper verification procedures instead of making assumptions based on appearance. Janet opened a file and pulled out Marcus's employee handbook. "Page 15, section 3, she said, flipping to the relevant section. "Security verification procedures. When someone claims to work for the company but lacks proper identification, what are you supposed to do?" Marcus remembered the training he had received when he started the job. "Contact the Human Resources Department for identity verification." "Exactly," Janet said. "You were supposed to call HR. We have procedures in place for exactly this type of situation. Instead, you decided to handle it on your own." Marcus realized that he had violated company policy in addition to making a terrible mistake. His situation was getting worse by the minute. "There's more," Janet continued. "We've reviewed the security footage multiple times." Mr. Chen remained calm and polite throughout the entire encounter. He never raised his voice or became aggressive. He repeatedly asked you to make a phone call to verify his identity. Your response was to become more hostile and eventually use physical force. Ms. Rodriguez nodded grimly. "Mr. Chen is known throughout the company for his patience and kindness. The fact that you treated him so poorly reflects very badly on our security training and procedures." Marcus felt tears forming in his eyes. I'm sorry, he said quietly. I thought I was protecting the company. We understand that you believed you were doing the right thing, Janet said, her voice softening slightly. But intent doesn't excuse the outcome. Your actions have created a serious problem for everyone involved. Through the conference room windows, Marcus could see that more employees were gathering in the lobby. Some were holding their phones, apparently still recording videos or taking pictures. The incident had become a spectacle that was drawing attention from throughout the building. What's going to happen to me? Marcus asked. Janet and Ms. Rodriguez exchanged looks. That depends on several factors, Janet replied. First, we need to assess the full extent of the damage to the company's reputation. Second, we need to determine what Mr. Chen wants to do about the situation. And third, we need to decide whether this represents a failure of individual judgment or a failure of our security training program. Mr. Chen wants to do something about it? Marcus asked nervously. Mr. Chen is the CEO, Ms. Rodriguez reminded him. He has every right to press charges for assault if he chooses to. You did physically grab him and force him out of the building. Marcus hadn't considered the possibility of criminal charges. The thought made him feel even more sick. However, Janet continued, Mr. Chen is also known for being reasonable and fair. He understands that mistakes happen, but this was a very public and very embarrassing mistake. Over the next hour, Marcus had to endure a series of uncomfortable meetings. He met with the head of legal affairs, who explained the potential liability issues the company was facing. He met with the public relations director, who was already working on damage control for the media attention. Each meeting made Marcus feel smaller and more ashamed. He had gone from being a proud, confident security guard to being the person who had created a company-wide crisis. By mid-afternoon, Marcus was told he could return to his security desk, but only to gather his personal belongings. He was being suspended pending a full investigation and review. As Marcus walked through the lobby to collect his things, he could feel everyone watching him. Conversation stopped when he passed by. People pointed and whispered. Some employees looked at him with pity, others with anger or disgust. Sarah, the receptionist, avoided making eye contact with him. Jake, his fellow security guard, looked deeply uncomfortable and didn't say anything as Marcus cleaned out his desk. Marcus packed his few personal items into a small box, a coffee mug, a picture of his family, and a small plant his girlfriend had given him. As he worked, he could hear fragments of conversations from nearby employees. Can you believe he didn't recognize the CEO? I heard Mr. Chen was really embarrassed. Do you think Marcus will be fired? I would be so mortified if that were me. When Marcus finished packing, he had to turn in his security badge and company ID card. This simple act felt like the final nail in the coffin of his career at Pinnacle Tech Solutions. As he walked toward the exit, carrying his box of belongings, Marcus passed the same glass doors where he had forced David Chen to leave just hours earlier. The irony was not lost on him that he was now the one being escorted out of the building. Outside on the sidewalk, Marcus stood for a moment looking back at the tall glass building where he had worked for 2 years. He wondered if he would ever be allowed back inside or if his career in security was over forever. His phone buzzed with a text message from his supervisor. Don't come in tomorrow. Wait for further instructions. Marcus walked to his car, knowing that tomorrow would bring either redemption or the end of everything he had worked for. Marcus spent a sleepless night thinking about what had happened. He replayed the morning's events over and over in his mind, wishing he could go back and handle things differently. His girlfriend Maria tried to comfort him, but Marcus felt too ashamed to talk about it much. Maybe it won't be as bad as you think, Maria said as they sat together on their couch. People make mistakes. Good companies understand that. Marcus shook his head. You didn't see the videos, Maria. I looked like a bully throwing out a homeless person. And it wasn't just anyone, it was the CEO, the person who owns the company. The next morning, Marcus woke up early out of habit, even though he wasn't supposed to go to work. He made coffee and sat at his kitchen table, staring at his phone. He was afraid to check social media or the news, but he couldn't stop himself from looking. The story had grown overnight. Several news websites had picked it up. Security guard throws CEO out of his own building, and corporate security gone wrong. The videos had been viewed hundreds of thousands of times. Marcus felt sick reading the comments. Most people were criticizing him harshly, calling him everything from incompetent to cruel. A few people defended him, saying he was just doing his job, but they were greatly outnumbered. Around 10 o'clock, Marcus's phone rang. It was Janet from Human Resources. "Marcus, I need you to come in this afternoon," Janet said. "Mr. Chen wants to meet with you personally." Marcus felt his heart skip a beat. "He wants to meet with me?" "Yes, be here at 2 o'clock. Come to the main conference room on the 15th floor." Marcus had never been to the 15th floor before. That was the executive level, where all the important company decisions were made. The thought of going there under these circumstances made him feel nauseated. "Janet," Marcus said hesitantly, "should I bring a lawyer?" There was a pause on the other end of the line. "That's your choice, Marcus, but Mr. Chen specifically requested that this be an informal conversation." Marcus spent the next few hours getting ready for what might be the most important meeting of his life. He put on his best suit and tie, the same outfit he had worn to his job interview 2 years earlier. He practiced what he might say to apologize for his actions. When Marcus arrived at Pinnacle Tech Solutions, he felt strange walking through the same lobby where everything had gone wrong the day before. Jake was at the security desk and gave Marcus a sympathetic nod as he passed by. The elevator ride to the 15th floor felt like it took forever. Marcus's hands were sweating and his heart was beating fast. When the doors opened, he found himself in a luxurious hallway, with expensive artwork on the walls and thick carpeting on the floor. A secretary greeted him and led him to the main conference room. It was a large room with a long, polished table and floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a beautiful view of the city. "Mr. Chen will be with you in a moment," the secretary said, gesturing for Marcus to take a seat. Marcus sat down at the conference table and tried to calm his nerves. He looked around the room, taking in the expensive furniture and decorations. This was a world he had never been part of, even though he had worked in the same building for 2 years. After a few minutes, the door opened and David Chen walked in. Marcus stood up immediately, his legs feeling shaky. David looked very different than he had the day before. He was wearing a perfectly tailored dark blue suit with a crisp white shirt and silk tie. His hair was neatly styled and he was clean-shaven. He looked like the successful CEO he was. But when David smiled, Marcus recognized the same gentle expression he had seen on the man in the hoodie. "Hello, Marcus," David said, extending his hand for a handshake. "Thank you for coming in today." Marcus shook David's hand, surprised by how normal and friendly he seemed. "Mr. Chen, I'm so sorry about yesterday. I don't know what to say." "Please sit down," David said, taking a seat across from Marcus. "And don't worry about yesterday right now. Let's just talk." Marcus sat down, still feeling nervous but slightly relieved by David's calm demeanor. "First," David said, "I want you to know that I don't hold any personal grudges about what happened. I understand that you were trying to do your job." Marcus felt a small wave of relief, but he was still confused. "Sir, I threw you out of your own building. I was rude and aggressive. How can you not be angry?" David smiled slightly. "Marcus, I've been running companies for 15 years. I've learned that getting angry about mistakes doesn't solve anything. What matters is understanding why the mistake happened and making sure it doesn't happen again." "I should have followed proper procedures," Marcus said quickly. "I should have called HR to verify your identity. I was wrong to make assumptions based on how you looked." "You're absolutely right about that," David agreed. "But I want to understand your thinking. What made you so certain that I didn't belong in the building?" Marcus thought about this carefully. "Honestly, sir, it was your appearance. I had never seen an executive dress so casually. And you looked tired and, well, like you had been living rough." David nodded. "I had been traveling for 26 hours straight. I flew from Tokyo to Los Angeles, then to New York, then took a train here. I was exhausted and I probably did look terrible. But why didn't you just go home first?" Marcus asked, then immediately regretted the question. "I'm sorry, that's not my business." "It's a fair question," David said. "I was excited to be back. I had been away from the company for 6 months and I wanted to see how things were running. I thought it would be fun to surprise everyone." Marcus felt even worse. "Instead, you got humiliated in front of your own employees." "Well, it certainly wasn't the surprise I had planned," David said with a wry smile. "But it was educational." "Educational?" David leaned forward. "Marcus, your actions yesterday revealed some serious problems with our company culture and procedures. The fact that you felt comfortable treating someone so poorly based on their appearance tells me that we haven't done a good enough job training our security staff. Marcus wasn't sure how to respond to this. Also, David continued, the fact that none of our employees recognize me after 6 months away suggests that I haven't been doing a good enough job staying connected with the people who work here. Sir, that's not your fault, Marcus said. You're the CEO, you have important things to do. But that's exactly the problem, David replied. I've been so focused on big picture strategy and international expansion that I've lost touch with the day-to-day operations of my own company. If my own security guard doesn't know who I am, how can I expect to understand what's really happening here? Marcus was surprised by this perspective. He had expected David to be focused on punishing him, not on examining his own role in what had happened. Mr. Chen, Marcus said hesitantly, what's going to happen to me? David was quiet for a moment, considering his answer carefully. Marcus, I'm going to give you a choice, he said finally. You can accept termination with a good reference and 6 months of severance pay. Or you can stay with the company and help me fix the problems that led to yesterday's incident. Marcus was stunned. You're offering to let me keep my job? With conditions, David clarified. You would need to undergo extensive retraining. You would need to formally apologize to the employees who witnessed yesterday's incident. And you would need to help me develop better security procedures and company culture training. Marcus felt overwhelmed by the unexpected offer. Why would you give me a second chance? David smiled. Because I believe in redemption, Marcus. Everyone deserves a chance to learn from their mistakes and become better. The question is, do you want that chance? Marcus looked at David Chen, the man he had humiliated just 24 hours earlier, and saw genuine kindness in his eyes. It was an opportunity he had never expected to receive. Yes, sir, Marcus said with conviction. I want that chance. 3 months later, Marcus stood in the same lobby where his life had changed forever. But everything was different now. He wore a new uniform with updated security badges and equipment. More importantly, he carried himself with a confidence that came from hard-earned wisdom rather than ignorant pride. The retraining process had been intense and humbling. Marcus had spent weeks learning about proper security procedures, company culture, and most importantly, how to treat every person with respect and dignity. He had studied photographs of all company executives and key personnel. He had practiced verification procedures until they became second nature. But the most difficult part had been the public apology. David Chen had arranged for Marcus to address the entire company during a monthly all-hands meeting. Standing in front of 500 employees, Marcus had acknowledged his mistakes and committed to doing better. It was embarrassing, but it was also liberating. I made assumptions based on appearance, Marcus had told the crowd. I let prejudice cloud my judgment, and I treated another human being poorly as a result. I'm sorry to Mr. Chen, I'm sorry to all of you, and I'm committed to making sure nothing like this ever happens again. The response from employees had been mixed. Some people remained skeptical of Marcus, while others appreciated his honesty and willingness to change. Slowly, over the weeks that followed, Marcus had rebuilt relationships with his colleagues through consistent professional behavior and genuine humility. David Chen had kept his word about using the incident as a learning opportunity for the entire company. New policies were implemented requiring multiple forms of identity verification before anyone could be denied entry. Security staff received extensive training on respectful communication and de-escalation techniques. More significantly, David had changed his own approach to leadership. He now made regular unannounced visits to different departments, always in casual clothes, to better understand how the company operated at every level. He had also implemented walk-around Wednesdays, where executives were required to spend time talking with frontline employees. On this particular morning, Marcus was reviewing the updated security protocols when he noticed a familiar figure approaching the building. It was David Chen, dressed in jeans and a sweater, carrying a coffee and looking relaxed. Good morning, Mr. Chen, Marcus said with a genuine smile as David approached the security desk. Good morning, Marcus, David replied warmly. How are things going today? Everything's running smoothly, sir, Marcus reported. I have you on the expected visitors list for your 9:30 meeting with the product development team. This was part of the new system. Even when David made informal visits, his assistant provided advance notice to security. It ensured proper procedures were followed while still allowing for spontaneous leadership interactions. Excellent, David said. Any issues I should know about? Actually, yes, Marcus said, pulling out his daily report. We had an incident yesterday with someone trying to enter without proper identification. I followed the new verification procedures, contacted HR, and we were able to confirm that he was a new employee who simply hadn't received his ID card yet. We got him temporary access and made sure he connected with his supervisor. David nodded approvingly. That sounds like exactly the right approach. Good work, Marcus. As David headed toward the elevators, Marcus reflected on how much had changed since that terrible morning 3 months ago. The incident that had nearly destroyed his career had ultimately made him a better security professional and a better person. Later that day, Marcus received an unexpected visitor. Jake Rodriguez, his fellow security guard, approached the desk with a concerned expression. "Marcus, we've got a situation," Jake said quietly. "There's a woman at the side entrance who's claiming to be the new vice president of marketing. She doesn't have her ID yet, and she's getting frustrated with our verification questions. A few months ago, Marcus might have approached this situation with suspicion and hostility, but his training had taught him a different way. Let's go talk to her together," Marcus said. "Remember, our job is to ensure security while treating everyone with respect." They walked to the side entrance, where they found a well-dressed woman in her 50s looking frustrated as she spoke on her phone. "Excuse me." "Ma'am," Marcus said politely as she ended her call. "I understand you're having some difficulty with our entry procedures. I'm Marcus, head of security, and this is Jake. We're here to help resolve this situation." The woman's expression softened at Marcus's respectful tone. "Thank you," she said. "I'm Dr. Patricia Williams. I just started as Vice President of Marketing, but my ID card hasn't arrived yet. I have an important meeting in 10 minutes. "I understand your urgency, Dr. Williams," Marcus said. "Let me call our HR department to verify your employment and get you temporary access. This should only take a few minutes." Marcus made the call while Jake stayed with Dr. Williams, engaging her in pleasant conversation about her new role. Within 5 minutes, HR had confirmed her identity and authorized temporary access. "Here's your temporary badge, Dr. Williams," Marcus said, handing her a visitor's pass. "I've also called ahead to let the marketing department know you're on your way up. Is there anything else we can do to help you today?" "That was wonderful," Dr. Williams said, looking impressed. "Thank you both for being so professional and helpful." After she left, Jake looked at Marcus admiringly. "You handled that perfectly," Jake said. "A few months ago, that could have been another disaster." Marcus nodded. "I learned that our job isn't just to keep bad people out. It's to make sure good people feel welcome while maintaining security. There's a big difference." That evening, Marcus received a text message from David Chen. "Heard about your excellent handling of the new VP situation today. Your growth over these past months has been remarkable. Thank you for proving that people can change." Marcus smiled as he read the message. He thought about how different his life could have been if David had chosen punishment over redemption. Instead of losing his job and his reputation, Marcus had gained wisdom, humility, and a deeper understanding of what it meant to serve others professionally. The incident that had once been his greatest shame had become his greatest teacher. Marcus had learned that assumptions could be dangerous, that respect was non-negotiable, and that everyone deserved to be treated with dignity regardless of their appearance or circumstances. Most importantly, he had learned that mistakes, no matter how public or embarrassing, could become opportunities for growth, if approached with the right attitude. David Chen had given him a second chance, but Marcus had earned his redemption through hard work, genuine change, and consistent professional behavior. As Marcus prepared to leave work that day, he stopped by the security desk to review the daily reports with the evening shift supervisor. Looking around the lobby, he felt proud of the culture of respect and professionalism that now characterized the security department. The man who had once thrown the CEO out of his own building had become someone who welcomed everyone with dignity and followed proper procedures without exception. It was a transformation that had taken months of effort, but it was worth every difficult moment. Marcus had not just kept his job, he had become better at his job and better as a person, and that he realized was a gift more valuable than any paycheck or position. The security guard who had made a terrible mistake had learned the most important security lesson of all, that protecting people meant treating them with respect, and that true strength came from humility, not from power. The story that had begun with prejudice and ended with redemption became a company legend. reminding everyone that second chances, when combined with genuine effort to change, could transform both individuals and organizations for the better.